Bet you thought Legit Level Review was going on another month hiatus, didn't you, you little bitch? Yeah, well, guess what? You thought wrong. The very thought of leaving you guys hanging again sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't bear to sit on my ass and do nothing for a month while copious amounts of perspiration built up on my forehead. I would have sat there rotting away as my room grew colder and colder until I couldn't stand it anymore. Huh. That's weird. I almost felt like a bit was coming on there for a second. Wonder what the punchline would have been. Guess I forgot. Time to roll the intro instead. Oh yeah, I let Mr. Manhattan out of the cage again. May God help us all.
The giant enemy spider.
Hey, spider on me like a Spider-Man. I've been jumping higher than the head up on a ceiling fan. I got to an adult, you've been talking to the middleman. And I don't want your girlie cause I do not want the cooties, man.
What's going on, everybody? Robert De Niro here. Cold Sweat's an interesting level in both gameplay and deco. It's a very special level, to put it that way. Basically, think of that kid Liam in your 4th grade class. That's how special this level is. Alright, so now that I've successfully visualized the uniqueness of this level's gameplay, let's move on to the actual review. The first part of Cold Sweat is pretty difficult at first, but the only click I can really remember being inconsistent in the end was the first dash orb, because it relies on pure muscle memory and extremely vague visual cues. And I mean, these are some vague fucking visual cues, guy. I mean, my thought process was literally, alright, Doggie. So when you're at 0.8 centimeters to the left of this glow, and about a frame after your brain processes the object color flash, you let go of the mouse. No, yeah, it's just a really stupid orb. Like, I mean, there's no other way to put it. The rest of this pre-drop, as I like to call it, gets pretty consistent. It's the very first part, so I don't have a big problem with it. But the next two parts, I can't stand them. I just had a terrible time with these parts, and it's why I had such a stressful time with the level overall. And to be honest, looking at the parts again, they're not, like, inherently bad. So I'm gonna try to put my experience aside, assuming I was just really shit at the game. No! But just know, the reason this video is out so late is because I needed a few months of therapy to put my experience behind me just to write this. Anyway, I can see this part getting semi-consistent. Besides the dash orb to triple jump combination of 11, that's fucking stupid. That part sucks with more sucking power than Mia Khalifa on a good old succulent Sunday. The rest just consists of really difficult but pretty skill-based timings. All facts aside, that's for sure the better part of the pre-drop, because the maze made me so goddamn upset. Pretty much every single one of the late timings belong on the shitty list, and the rest of the timings are almost trying to be worse than each other. The maze is just a battle of who can be the worst timing in the fucking level. To give some examples, the 2 blue orbs at 22 and the pink orb and the yellow portal at 23 combined, it's just complete fucking RNG, yo. I'm pretty certain fucking Nlex jumped in the collab just to make the placement of that portal as shitty as possible. The black orb at 26 could not be worse. It's a mid-timing with a gravity portal slapped on top of it to obstruct your vision from even having the chance of visually calculating where to click the orb. I can't. Then the blue orb after it is just a last fucking frame, like no surprise there. The last part of the maze, it's only better because it's easier. Like, it's still dog shit because it's somehow more awkward than the maze. I don't know how that happens, but sorry, doctor, man. I snapped. The spam UFO, the easiest part of the level, said nobody ever unless you're fucking stupid and to play one attempt. For 2 reasons, actually. First of all, the last thing it is spam. It is not spam. Saying that part is spam is like saying the orbs in Poltergeist is fucking spam. Like, it can be spam, but it's the most inconvenient way to do any part in any level. Spamming at the UFO in Cold Sweat not only never works without alternating arrow key and spacebar at max fucking speed, but it tires you the hell out. Like, imagine busting a fat one, right? After a non-stop 30-minute session, and being forced to do this fucking way with half a second break in between. Yeah, no, not exactly ideal if you ask me. Second of all, it's not the easiest part of the level because it decides to work literally whenever it wants. In fact, I probably wouldn't even have beaten this level if ViewSonic didn't show me the click pattern. Yeah, there's not much details I can provide about this part, and I think you get the idea. Moving on to the hardest part of the level. Well, just kidding, it's not, but I mean, well, it is, but it's literally only skill-based. So it gets consistent if you're good at the game. Think of this part as equivalent to the wave game mode itself. In the beginning, when you start playing the game, it's a really confusing and hard as shit game mode, and you hate it with a passion. But as you get better at the game, you start liking the wave more, because it's very skill-based, so it rewards you for being good. But instead of getting better at the game in this case, you get better at the part. It's extremely addicting to play, and feels so right with this song. Yes, I'm plagiarizing my description of my Cold Sweat video. What are you gonna do about it? The only problem with this part is that it's impossible when you're starting out, and you have to mega grind it for days on end to get consistent at all. However, when you do end up getting consistent at the wave, it's genuinely one of the most rewarding parts to play in any level I've ever played. The intensity from 0 is also something I can appreciate. The first half of the wave before the teleport shit is actually flawless. Fuck, dude, you know, I'm really sucking this part off right now. It's not even Succulent Sunday. My bad, guys, I'll tone it down. The second half is a little buggy, and sometimes launches you into the corner of a slope and kills you. I do remember there being a way to avoid this, but it's still pretty unforgiving under pressure. That's pretty much the wave part. Props to Para for doing something right for once. I don't even think I need to talk about the last part. No! I mean, like, what do I say? The jump at 94 is cool, I guess. It's a really cool ending after the intense wave part, which a lot of levels decide not to do. And that's Cold Sweat's gameplay. This shit put me in a cold-ass sweat, I'll tell you that much. My gameplay rating is gonna end up being 5.5 out of 10, being brought down by the maze and retardedness of the UFO. If the wave sucked, this shit would be a straight 3 out of 10, so I commend it for being 80 times better than the rest of the parts. Alright, my job here is done, and it's time to go back in EDP's dungeon.
Is that fucking Yankee finally gone? Thank God, I can actually do my job now. Wasting no time whatsoever, Cold Sweat opens up looking like a shitty Black Blizzard sequel. It's entirely grayscale aside from the glow surrounding the orbs and has minimal amounts of detail. Simplistic intros can be done really well, but despite the low object count in this part, it feels weirdly balanced to me. The first bit is alright, but the second half introduces glow on the orbs, larger segments of ground, and a weird object outline pulse which takes away from all the atmosphere the first few seconds created. I also feel like the glow on the ground is way too bright. It draws your attention away from the details in the background. Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, it is this year's annual Glow Orb migration. This is a well-documented event where every year, thousands of these small fuzzballs nope the fuck out of creative and original levels in order to find a more suitable habitat, ultimately ending up in basic bitch glow levels like these, where they live peaceful lives until people with good taste point out how fucking ugly they are. But I digress. The cool thing about the introduction is this nifty black masking effect. It works great when the only colors on the screen are black and white, which is why I like the first half of this a bit better. I do wish it actually covered up every block, since it's a bit awkward when all these fellas are blacked out while these poor cubes have to continue living visible to the world. Although that's probably not practical considering black masking effects make up only 13% of the effect population, yet still only manage to cover up about 50% of these blocks. And please don't ask for my sources on that statistic. I don't have much else to say about this part since it's a borderline layout with a couple of small effects thrown in. Wish the opening made more of an impact, but there's a lot more to come. At least it has one of my favorite Easter eggs of all time. It's my mans Tony Earl and Fungbus just straight vibing. Don't tell me you wouldn't smoke a fat one with them. The second part is where Cold Sweat really begins for me. While this level isn't themed, this part actually manages to feel cold to me. The extremely desaturated colors combined with the square particle effect makes the player feel like they've suddenly entered a snowstorm. At this point in the video, I need to talk about the word effect. Cold Sweat is the first effect level I featured on this series, and effect levels showcase a fuck ton of effects. Because of that, I'm gonna have to say the word effect so much that it's affecting my ability to view effect as an actual word, and by the end of the video it probably won't sound like one to you either. If you really want to put yourself into a cold sweat, take a shot every time you hear the word effect for the rest of this video. By the way, I'm not liable for any alcohol poisoning that occurs. Back to the level, the effect where the outline of the block splits off into different directions cranks the intensity up to 11, which works perfectly with the loud-ass clapping noise happening every few seconds in the song. I love that the spikes become more detailed with the pulses as well. It really emphasizes the other effects happening at the same time. The problem is the part is 20 goddamn seconds long, and it doesn't change once the entire time. It would have been neat to see the part slowly become more distorted as it went on, or to maybe change the direction the outline effect moved. Just something new so the part doesn't feel too static by the time you've reached the end of it. Even without that, this is a massive improvement over the first part. 30 seconds into the level and Para still doesn't seem to remember that other game modes exist, but what's nice is that every cube in the level so far has gotten progressively better. This part is definitely my favorite out of the pre-drop, probably because it introduces new designs as it goes on. The first half is basically the beginning if effort was actually put into it. Like the previous bit, it has some cool effects that sync perfectly to the music and makes for a great atmosphere, but because I'm an annoying bitch, I gotta nitpick a couple things. First, why don't the spikes pulse with the other outlines? The only thing I can think of is for visibility reasons, but it looks really weird regardless. Second, these pulsing blocks not lining up really bothers me. Para built them to line up like this, but I wish they'd been rotated to face each other instead, since the latter looks much nicer in my opinion. You know what else looks nice? The second half of this part. Holy shit, this ground is so cool. It's a pretty simple design, so I'm surprised I haven't seen anything like it before. The part also gets more distorted as it goes on, almost like a bad trip. Your time is coming, little Tad, I promise. The spikes finally get their point out of their ass and decide it's okay to pulse along with the other outlines, and it looks so much better than before. The transition out of this part is also super neat. Para has been doing a great job at making simple effects that go to the music perfectly, and this is no exception. At this point in Cold Sweat, we reach the infamous keyboard spam simulator. When discussing this part, I hear a lot about the sacred spam gene and how unfair it is that only certain people can successfully play the level. However, if this is truly a genetic issue, then I believe I've stumbled upon a solution to this epidemic. You see, in the 1940s, our German friends started acting out a nifty little concept called eugenics. Oh, right, I'm here to talk about the deco. At this point, it seems Para forgot he was working on Cold Sweat and accidentally pasted a part from the Nightlife sequel into the level, but it looks fucking great, so who am I to care? Of course, the highlight of this part are the insane pulses, along with the same outline effect from earlier being used to even greater effect here, working perfectly with the LSD-esque blocks. The spikes appear to be having an epileptic seizure, which fits in perfectly with everything else happening around them. The only issue I have here is that the background feels like it's getting swallowed up by everything else. When you look at it in the editor, you can see what looks kind of like a Minecraft dropper map, but in-game it looks more like a hurricane has picked up random colors and scattered them around the back. It still works as a pretty trippy effect, but I think making it slightly brighter and less saturated would have made it much more noticeable. These spam shenanigans are followed by another nut-worthy transition, which by this point you guys should know gets hella bonus points from me. Now for the bit that everyone's been waiting for, the triangular acid trip of a mini-wave. Cold Sweat has followed an interesting trend. It got a fuck ton of praise when being built and upon being released, but as time has gone on, the community seems to have gradually fallen out of love with the level, and I think I can use this part to explain why. The first time you see this wave, it completely overloads your dumb ape brain with lines moving faster than a fucking fighter jet in colors that look like they came straight out of that one Pokemon episode. It grabs your attention like nothing else does and makes you want to rewatch it over and over again, but then you actually do watch it a few times, and it starts to lose its charm. That's because this section is pretty much a one-trick pony. The speedy line movement becomes less interesting every time you see it because you know it's coming, and since it's the thing that absolutely carries the part, it loses its magic very quickly. Now I know I've made a couple epileptic jokes in the video so far, but this part genuinely hurts my eyes. When looking at the first 10 victors of Cold Sweat on Pointer Crate, only a single one of them used a version of the level that kept the wave in full detail. Do they all have shit PCs? Maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of them intentionally used an LDM to make this part less painful. I also feel like the wave suffers from the same issue the earlier Cube part did. It goes on for way too long. While it is the same length as the UFO, it has far less happening, especially when stripped of the line effect. In conclusion, this part is amazing the first time you see it, but it seems both myself and most of you guys felt it got more stagnant as the initial all wore off. UFO part is 10 times better, fight me. Cold Sweat started out pretty weak, and honestly ends in a similar way, which is a shame considering how good most of this final part is. This section has to be one of the trippiest I've ever seen in a level, and you guys know my Psychonaut ass eats that shit right up. This moving outline effect is used to its greatest potential here, with the different outlines moving in almost every direction possible. Unlike the wave part, you're in a slow and much calmer section, so having crazy amounts of moving object on the screen doesn't become too much of a visual clusterfuck. I also love how the outlines start out looking like an Excision concert, slowly fade to grey, then come back strong again for the last few seconds. It works perfectly with the dreary and mysterious atmosphere the song is giving off. The saw blades feel a bit out of place to me. I think I would have preferred them to be replaced with more normal structures, but they're not the worst things to exist. No, the worst thing has to be the last few seconds of the level. I was getting ready to call this final bit my favorite part, and I guess I still could since I don't want to associate the end of this with it at all, but what the fuck, man. When I saw this, I went flaccid faster than the time my girlfriend asked to peg me after I just beat an extreme demon.
I beat it.
Can I pick you?
I'm sure some of you didn't mind it that much, but it really bothers me when parts just completely change for the worst mid-section. I picked on Hellpeg for it last episode, so I'm gonna do it here too. An ending is supposed to be the final impression and send-off of a level, which Para was absolutely nailing before, but then said fuck it, you've been trolled. It's times like these when you have to ask yourself, what would Tony Earl do? And I'm sure as hell it's none of this layout pussy shit. Just look at Tony Earl. He's so pissed he might just deny Israel being a legitimate state, and God help us all when Tony Earl starts talking politics. Still, I wasn't lying when I said I adored the first 75% of this ending, so I'll leave things off on a positive note by yet again busting a load over this laser-filled light show. Cold Sweat is a very bipolar level. I found myself completely shitting on one part while praising the next like it's the second coming of Christ. Well shit, maybe I'm actually the bipolar one. What's interesting to me is it seems like the community has split off into factions of loving or hating this level recently, and I seem to be one of the few falling right in the middle. It has some absolutely unique and fantastic parts mixed in with a couple smelly ones that didn't age well at all. As a result, I'm giving the decoration a score of 6.5 out of 10. Combined with the 5.5 for the gameplay, Cold Sweat comes out with a final score of 6 out of 10, which seems fair to me considering how most people view the gameplay. Let me know if you agreed or disagreed in the comments, since this level seems to be a lot more controversial than I first thought. As always, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you've seen. I'm now on the grind to 10,000 subscribers and will always be making more of these legit level reviews. If you don't, Tony Earl will call your ass at 3 AM and then you'll really be sorry. Till next time guys, peace.